Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng's term ends on this very day after 10 years at the helm of the Judiciary. Mogoeng was appointed back in August of 2011 by the former President Jacob Zuma. For more on the legacy of the outgoing Chief Justice, I'm joined now by Mr. Mashudu Kutama from the Black Lawyers Association. He's the president, as well as Advocate Modidima Mannya, a legal commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to your daytime update. Let's start with you, Mr. Kutama. We know that at the time when Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng was appointed by former President Jacob Zuma, there was a little bit of uncertainty there as to whether or not the Chief Justice would actually be just in dealing with the issues of the former president. Tell us about this, and as well as the reasons why there would have been this doubt at the beginning of his tenure.
Good afternoon to you, Tammy, and your viewers and your listeners. You are very right. In actual fact, there was no doubt. There was a huge criticism by various organizations and various individuals. The major criticism was just that the former president ignored or could not pick up the popular candidate, then Deputy Judge President Moseneke, and there were also other two male candidates who experienced more than him. And there was this fear that Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng is being appointed to shield the former President Zuma, but it turned out to be hoax, or it turned out not to be true. True to his oath, Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng did very well. He is leaving behind an excellent judiciary. Of course, there might be challenges like any other arms of government, but the judiciary has proven for the past 10 years under Mogoeng Mogoeng that it stood the test of time. I must emphasize that for your viewers, during the term of Mogoeng Mogoeng, that's when we have what we call norms and standard of judges, so that judges act in a particular manner and deliver judgment. The last point that also is ignored, that the last interview that he conducted, for the first time in South Africa, we had two female DJPs appointed. DJP Mbele of Free State and DJP Siminya of Limpopo. So there's a huge transformation that occurred under Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng.
Advocate Mannya, what would you say have been some of the turnkey judgments and some of the achievements of Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng during his 10-year tenure?
Yes, good afternoon. Obviously, Justice Mogoeng operates within a pack of 10 judges. So it's not just about him, it's about the judgments of the Constitutional Court. And as you know, each of the judges do write judgments, and he has written some good judgments, and contrary to what people would have thought, that because of his religious beliefs, he would have, written one way or the other to advance his religious beliefs. He has not done that. I mean, the judgment that relates to corporal punishment, which he was part of, and brought to court, by the way, by a Christian organization. Nothing favorable to that Christian organization was given. The constitution was upheld. The same, I think my colleague has spoken about the apprehension that he was going to be doing the bidding for former President Zuma, and he penned a judgment which was not favorable at all to former President Zuma. So in general, I mean, in terms of his judicial responsibilities, I wouldn't find anything to fault him. And I think it would even be very subjective to try and do that, because I think how you would interpret a good judge would be a very subjective matter.
I must ask you this, Mr. Kutama, and this, following up on the point that was made by Advocate Mannya on the religious stance of the Chief Justice. When he criticized South Africa's foreign policy on Israel in 2020, that largely had to do with his religious beliefs and religious inclinations. What impact and how much of an impact did that actually have on the Chief Justice in his career and how he meted out his justice?
I think we must distinguish between the Chief Justice as an office bearer of that office and his individual beliefs. Even in 2011, some of us who participated in his appointment or the process thereof knew very well that he's steadfast, he's an open Christian, but as long as his Christianity or his religion does not interfere with his jurisprudence or his thinking, I mean, he is a man of God who believes in God. And I think that our views, even in 2020, we were saying he might actually have overstepped because of the office he holds. But there's nothing wrong for the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa to express his religious views. Remember, South Africa is a secular state. There's also a freedom of expression. Of course, to the extent that those who are non-Christian might have felt offended, but the Chief Justice, as Chief Justice, he has never emphasized his Christianity. Advocate Mannya there emphasized a judgment that has to deal with corporal punishment, and it was challenged by a Christian organization. But Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng was able to set aside his Christian belief or set aside the Bible and follow the Constitution. And in all respects, even if you read his dissenting judgment, there's nothing that he bases his argument on Christianity. But of course, for the office he holds, there were many people who believed that he should not have emphasized, he should not have entered the terrain of foreign policy, because there's also separation of powers. You will not want a cabinet minister to deliver a judgment if he's not a judge. But in this instance, he said it outside court. He said it he was a guest speaker, and then he said something in support of Israel. And I don't think that if someone who holds such an office of a Chief Justice raises views outside court, people should worry about that.
As we wrap up our conversation today, I'd like to ask you this, Advocate Mannya. Alison Tilley of Judges Matter has said this, that Chief Justice Mogoeng's tenure has, quote-unquote, coincided with one of the most challenging periods on the bench, while his former colleague on Constitutional Hill, Justice Johan van der Westhuizen, says that he saved the judiciary at a critical moment. Can you relate to this? And what is it that you believe he saved the judiciary from? And what are these critical moments that are being made reference to?
Yes, look, he did contribute significantly to upholding the judiciary at the time where it was under siege. You will recall that there were moments where there were even marches, people inviting judges to the streets for sparing. The court has been the guardian, really, of this nation when the other two arms of the state seem to be withering and shaking. But at the same time, the Chief Justice Mogoeng has done some measure of damage to the judiciary. I think the idea that my colleague is talking about, of him talking in his personal capacity, doesn't hold water. The conduct of judges both inside and outside court is regulated. He has a right to his freedom of belief and speech and all this, but that is regulated because of the position that he holds. If you recall, the issue around Israel, and it was very regrettable for the Chief Justice to say this, that even if 50 million people, and that represents more or less 75% of the population of South Africa, said we do not agree with what you're saying, he'll stand by that, which means he puts his personal beliefs above the nation, which is unfortunate for a person in his position. He had a similar gaffe with regard to the vaccine, that the president was at pains to try and encourage South Africans to vaccinate. And here comes the Chief Justice, one of the three most powerful people in the country, to come and tell us about the 666 in a vaccine, which is a matter that the scientists could have better dealt with. You know, the courts always say they defer to the experts. Now, we, inside or outside court, the Chief Justice ought to conduct himself in a manner that gives public confidence. You must remember that justice
Advocate Mannya, unfortunately, time is no longer on our side, but if you could, just in 30 seconds, if you can respond to this. What the Chief Justice said is that the freedom of religion is what covers him in those particular instances. In 30 seconds, does that hold water for you or not?
It doesn't hold water for me. The Chief Justice took an oath of office, and that oath of office doesn't contain any religious prescripts.
We'll leave it at that for this afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time.